Happy Friday, everyone. Welcome to Purpose Fridays with Sherry, friends, and family. Derek Watson here with you today. Glad to have you with us. A preemptive happy 4th of July weekend. Take the time to thank all those that have served our country, making all this possible for us to have a great weekend and enjoy and reflect. Got a lot of great stuff for you today. Again, I'm talking with Sherry Watson, who you'll see on cam with us. I'm going to be discussing nonprofit strategy, tips, what's working now, what we're up to, what our students are doing out there, all the great work we're doing. So let's go ahead and get this started. So just remember, one quick reminder before we begin that live Q&A will begin at the end after we wrap. And on your right there on your control panel, you can submit questions over to us as we go into our Q&A segment. So thanks again for joining us. Sherry, Mom, how are you? Go ahead and take us away. Let's get started.
Hey, happy 4th of July weekend. What a great time to have our Purpose Friday, our happy hour, to celebrate our freedom, our independence. And it goes right into what we've talked about the last couple of weeks, Derek. I want to just really start out by saying, Karina, I'm so grateful that you recognized where's my purple. You guys, I couldn't find anything but purple in my closet, but I finally found one red shirt with the flag, with my father-in-law's flag. He was in the Marines. I want us to really take the time today to really talk and spend some time talking about how we bring forth the services, the supports for our veterans, for our military that have been over fighting for our freedom. So Derek, I invited some folks on. Right now they're with me listening. Some of my mentors, some of my colleagues, some of my partners in crime from the disability field are on with us today. As I've spent the last couple of weeks sharing with them what our nonprofits are doing around the country. You know, I told you guys last week after going to Phoenix and doing our connecting visit and being able to go to the Disability Empowerment Center, an independent living center like one of the 800 we started 25 years ago, and to be able to walk around state-of-the-art wellness and fitness center, all the things that we dream about having in our own gyms, 100,000 square feet. And the power of that is that people with disabilities led that movement. So guys, what I want to share with you today is some things that are really working with our students right now. Last week, we found funding from a state agency for 3 houses to start setting up our homes for young adults aging out of foster care. And it was about connecting, but now one step further. It's about showing the economic development side. We know that our country's not going the right way. We know that we live in the greatest country in the world, the United States of America, the American dream. So how do we get it back on track? How do we bring common sense solutions? You look at our debt, trillions of dollars. So we know we've got to do some things differently. So today I want to really spend some time, and you guys, I know we have a lot of new folks. We've been getting the most incredible emails with the things you guys are doing. The Patriot Clinic. Thing I saw this weekend, an email from a group that have a nonprofit and are providing services to veterans with traumatic brain injuries, with post-traumatic stress syndrome. And when we wanted to change that paradigm, 5 years ago, this month, July 26th, is the anniversary for the Americans with Disabilities Act. When I walked around this Disability Empowerment Center last week with Ed and our client, and you guys, we have an exhibit at the Smithsonian on disability history, disability culture. A friend of mine has the Disability Culture Institute, where we show our pride in who we are. We're not victims. We're not tragic waste. We're proud of the monumental civil rights legislation that changed this world, that allowed us to be part of the American dream. So how does that align with where veterans, where these young military folks coming home are? We see them as homeless, disabled. We're building warehouses for them, more long-term care homes that are going to cost a lot more money. And what 20-year-old wants to go live in a long-term care home that nobody goes in because people are sent there to die? They smell like you know what. They're an institution, and they want to go spend the next 50 years there. And us as taxpayers are going to pay triple, quadruple the amount of money that it would take for them to be participants in the American dream, to live in their own community with supports around them. There's something very, very wrong, and it's time to lead. We have so many veterans projects that are led by veterans, that veterans are standing up saying, we want to lead in creating a movement for our community. Let us tell you guys what we need, what would be the supports we need to come back and live a full life again. You know, one of our purpose consultants that we're going to bring on one of our calls with us real soon, he's from the military, and he came back home, and he went to the VA hospital, and he was given a handful of drugs. Many of these young folks I meet with talk about the suicide drugs they're given. They're given a handful of pills and end up being more confused. So what can we do? Well, you guys, I want to share something that just happened this last weekend. You know, these Fridays are going to be happy hour Fridays, a time for us to all share, a time for us to think through some solutions. Can you imagine 200 people right now of us that could go out and start creating the conversations, the advocacy around changing systems? We did it with a small group of people, and we just kept building grassroots in Houston, in Denver, in Albuquerque, in Boston. We all started gathering. We lived in nursing homes. We didn't have transportation. We didn't have curb cuts. Think about that. So awesome to think about what we can do now. So as we look at this young population that's coming home, and as I sat in a meeting with the secretary of the VA in California, and as they were so proud of the hundreds of millions, listen to me, hundreds of millions of dollars they spent to just open a new long-term care home in LA with 20 beds. Not a place where folks can live, 20 beds. Now, can you imagine if we would take even 100th of that, 1 million, 2 million, 5 million, and set up an employment training center, set up transitional living, set up a place where folks could go and kind of reacclimate? Think of the difference. I can be so strong and so factual about this because 25 years ago, people with disabilities and seniors were going down that same road. 90% of all the money in this country through Medicaid, through Medicare, was going toward institutions. Some states 100%. That's our tax dollars. Medicaid is the biggest budget in our states that's draining us. And so does it make sense that we're warehousing these young folks with the disability and we're spending 100,000, 200,000, 400,000 a year for this nursing home to warehouse them? Think about what that money could be doing if it was redirected in the community. That's the path we set out on. We said, no longer are we going to be warehoused. No longer are we going to have people set up things for us without us. Our motto, posters, all the centers, we had them everywhere, said nothing about us without us. Now think about the veterans. What really brought this home to me, to bring this up today, to share with you guys, to get you thinking about the solutions we can bring forth. On Saturday, I'd been working all last week with one of our groups in Kansas City. He's doing amazing work with soccer, teaching young kids that are inner city, that don't have the opportunities, giving them a place to really thrive, bringing in veterans to help be the mentors, looking at them as the gifts they have, what they've learned, the structure, their detail-oriented service, giving that to kids, okay? So we had worked with all of them. We're working on an affordable housing project that'll be multi-generational, including veterans. So at school, so much is happening. So I'm thinking, wow, for years, my passion, my really strong purpose has been to be behind the scenes, to facilitate a veterans group to take the lead, just like we did. We had vocational rehabilitation, and it was the most bureaucratic system that didn't work for us. Just like veterans have the VA. It's the most bureaucratic system I've tried working through. We started going sitting in the meetings in Voc Rehab, Department of Education. We started going sitting at the table, being part of the groups. We started saying, no, that's not working. That's not where we want the services, right? And then we would do papers, and we would do reports, and we would do testify to the legislature. We would do whatever it took, and then they still wouldn't include us in the funding mechanism. We could get funded to live in a nursing home. We are institutional biased, but we couldn't live in the community. So we would do whatever it took. We'd stand firm in our belief. And whether that meant going and taking 100 people and sitting in the governor's office and saying, we're not leaving until you meet with us, until you talk to us, because we've tried every channel. And 3 hours later, the little secretaries are all scared and saying, well, he's not here right now. And we say, well, they know where he is. We at least want communication. We're going to stay here. And then we ordered pizzas, and we bring in ice coolers with water. They kind of get the hint. 100 people, little elders, folks with disabilities, with canes, with all kinds, sitting in the room just because we want to meet with the governor, because he's going to make us all go back into the nursing home. Does that make sense? So throughout 25 years, we've done whatever it takes. So going with Ed and Heidi and showing them our exhibit at the Smithsonian, our 8-foot by 10-foot pictures of President Bush signing the Americans with Disabilities Act with Justin Dart, our leader, Evan Camp, paralyzed from the neck down. He was the director of EEOC, our first disabled advocate working within the president's cabinet. Amazing. But along with those pictures, I saw in the 1980s when we started, when there was no ADA, There were no curb cuts. There were no ramps. There were no metal buildings. There weren't any short buses. We couldn't get on planes. We couldn't get on buses. Saw us, pictures of us climbing up the steps at the Capitol with empty wheelchairs, with people climbing up it. He saw us sitting in front of a bus with signs that said, "We will ride," with quotes that said, with me saying, "We can't go even ride to the back of the bus. We can't even get on the bus." And he saw us being arrested. He saw people being handcuffed, people being on the ground with the police. We stood firm and knew that we were the soldiers in the army of compassion. And all of our comrades that were in the nursing home with no voice, no control of their life, and all of us taxpayers, that our money was being spent in ways that made no sense. And our state budgets were being in deficits, and we were going into debt. We led the way, and we said we will no longer be institutionalized. Last weekend, after working with our students, working with our purpose consultants, really planting the seeds for the veterans to take the lead, we started with a very simple peer support group. Peer support, getting us together. What did we need? What is a common issue that we could all focus around to build the momentum, to build our coalitions, right? Peer support, bringing that for the veterans so that they go out and lead, so they meet with VA, so they go meet with legislators, so they can go to that training in San Diego with the Secretary of the VA. And I asked about the VASH vouchers. He said, well, ask my deputy dog, he does housing. And I said, I already asked him, he didn't know about them. California sent thousands of VASH vouchers back to the federal government. And look at the homeless population. That's criminal. People should be raising Cain. Those are Section 8 vouchers that all of you that are real estate investors, you have properties. That is funding with people that are ready to go into affordable housing. And yet we couldn't distribute those, and so we sent them back. The veterans need to be up in arms saying, no, you're not going to put us in these long-term care homes. You know, I met with the Navy SEALs, and I said, don't you have the saying, no brother or sister left behind? When you're on the field, you'll sacrifice your life. But now you've come back, and you have 3 of your group that were sent to Walter Reed, severe injuries. Where are they at now? And they all went, I don't know. I said, so what about that no brother or sister left behind? We called the long-term care home in North Carolina to go with one of our nonprofits, to go start a peer group, to meet with the folks in that long-term care home. And that long-term care home told us they didn't need us in there, that they take care of their own. There's a lot of work to be done. We were in a training in Orlando, $600 million they spent. And I showed folks an article on long-term care home and other medical services. What happens when they get through with rehab? Where do they go? I met with the case managers. They work with the Department of Defense. Again, the fragmented system for you guys, for the veterans, it's in DOD, it's in VA, it's in all over the place. They have 39 case managers. And their job is, once these young kids go to those polytrauma centers, the billion-dollar rehab centers with the state-of-the-art technology, their only option to release them is into a nursing home, a long-term care home. When they did that 20 years ago with traumatic brain injury, now all these fancy dancy rehab centers that popped up that were charging us, taxpayers, Medicaid, $40,000 a month. They took a nursing home sign where they were getting $3,000 a month, and because we were this new industry and nobody knew what to do with this, they turned the sign around and they put brain injury rehab and they charged $40,000 a month. But we start showing where when they fly in on their private jets to the board meeting and rent a yacht, we were working with thousands of young people that had all their money been drained, all of our money through Medicaid taxpayers. They'd spend it all at these fancy dancy centers, and then they put them into a nursing home. We showed where research shows if you're placed inappropriately, you regress. Fast forward, we're spending billions of dollars on the fancy dancy polytrauma centers and things for veterans, and then we send them to long-term care homes. The case manager, when I told her what we were doing and how excited we were, and we're leading a movement with our mission to empower and launch at least 10,000 nonprofits, and her voice was very shaky, and she said, "I'm glad you have hope because we see no light at the end of the tunnel." Things have to change. And what was so cool, you guys, bringing this to you, getting us to really think about our legislators, who we can start talking to about redirect funding. We don't need more. We don't need to set up a bunch of new things. Take that funding that we have and redirect it in the community. That's what we did. Senator Domenici, Senator Bingaman, my New Mexico delegation, Jim Brady, my mentor that was a press secretary for President Reagan. We set up congressional hearings, and we were able to go to Congress and testify, and have me, and have Jim, and have doctors, and have medical professionals, and have case managers go in and talk about the system wasn't working and how we could redirect funding. So we started in the state of New York. There was spent hundreds of millions of dollars. Listen to that, hundreds of millions of dollars to place people out of state in these fancy dancy centers, right? So we started bringing that money back into the state, brought the people back home. We had an advisory group made up of people with brain injuries, families. It wasn't the other folks taking care of us, sitting with the Department of Health Secretary Bill, sitting with the leaders in the agencies, and looking at how we can take that $10 million and we can grant it to different nonprofits to set up services in the community. So as we started bringing these folks home, guess what? We had nonprofits that would bring attendants so they could live at home, and they needed some support. They had transportation we set up. We put all that money back into the community to allow folks to come home and live with their family, live with their kids, be a part of the American dream, and cost a tenth as much money as it was living in institutions. So now, couldn't we do something like that with the veterans? Can't we look at history and something that's so successful and change that? So I'm at this weekend, after we'd been talking about with our team and starting these movements and bringing different veteran groups together, and there's so much happening with us, with the Power of Purpose. The kind of opportunities we're getting with corporate America, with Indy 500, with the Super Bowl, and you won't believe what we're going to be sharing with you. Coming to us and we want to feature one of your nonprofits. Now they're looking at us as leading in this area. So we have opportunity to highlight you guys, to bring you opportunities where one of the things, PepsiCo, Coca-Cola, they're paying $150,000 to advertise in this. They're giving it to us for a nonprofit with no charge, and they're going to set up the PSAs, they're going to do it professional. Do you realize what's happening? To take the veteran's message now, a veteran to take this message forward, that we don't need to be taken care of. We need to be empowered and create our coalitions so that we can lead the way. So as I'm thinking through all this and meeting with different veterans groups and talking to the case manager, talking to DOD and starting to formulate our plan and talking to my mentors, my colleagues that have led the disability movement, saying, where do we go? How do we change this? Let's look at our history. So this week I decided to take off Saturday and Sunday and just kind of unwind a little bit. And I love music. For those of you that don't know, before my injury, my whole life was music. I was a concert pianist. I played the saxophone since I was 8. I had a blues band. Went to college on a music scholarship. Had a music academy. That's all I've ever known is music. And so to lose that, to not be able to have the fine motor movement to play the piano, the embouchure to do the mouthpiece with the saxophone. I remember it, I know how, but my body won't cooperate. So the way I can feel that in my soul still and release those emotions I felt with music is to go and listen and be a part of it. So there was a Taos Solar Music Festival. Now, those of you that haven't been in New Mexico, Santa Fe's cool. It's gotten real touristy. It's like the #1 destination. It's cool, pretty touristy. But Taos has still got the charm. So go up there. It's a 6-hour concert. Can you imagine? 2 different stages, man, different kinds of music, rock and roll, blues, jazz. So I'm just loving the music. And this guy walks by me. I look at him. We look at each other. And it's like, wow. It was Governor Gary Johnson. Many of you know him. He ran for President of the United States, the Green Party, the Republican Party. Gary Johnson has brought so many issues forward that others are afraid to talk about, or that politically they walk the line. Gary never did that. Gary came in as governor in the 90s. I think it was 1990 or 92. He came to New Mexico as a business leader. He never was in politics, didn't have a family with a long political history. He was a business owner in Albuquerque. And he brought that business common sense solutions to our state. So when we sat down with him, I just moved back from Washington, D.C. I was not going to go this direction, right? I was going in to get my PhD. But I kept getting called into the nursing homes because I was a poster child. Little country girl, sustains a brain injury, goes to D.C., tell us what you learned. Bring us back home that. And so I started getting calls saying, hey, we have a young guy in the nursing home. Would you come in and visit with his man's mom? Hey, there's a young girl in this nursing home. We'd like for you to come see her. So I started going back in. I started sitting there with the families, with the young kid Bradley that'd been there for 3 years. He had his accident, got hit by a drunk driver. A young 18-year-old Navajo boy was on his way to Harvard, got a scholarship, beautiful artist, and he got hit by a drunk driver. Was in a coma. As soon as he was stabilized, they sent him to a nursing home. He had spent 3 years in a nursing home. 3 years. He had 7 younger brothers. His mom drove 2 hours one way every day to sit with him. She'd put the other little guys on the bus. She'd drive 2 hours, sit with Bradley. They kept telling her he was in a coma. She begged him to even scrub the toilets for $5 a week just to get some gas money. couldn't do anything for her. And yet, as I sat there with him and saw him atrophied, if those of you can see me, his wrists were turned inward. He had just laid there and just atrophied and wilted, and our state was paying 400 and some thousand a year, 400 and some thousand to lay in a bed of pee and atrophy. And as I sat there with him and kept looking at how he could respond, because I know I laid there the same way, trapped in a body that couldn't respond. I could hear people. I knew what was going on. I couldn't let them know. I was sitting there with Bradley, and they were trying to get him to blink. Well, he couldn't blink. His eyes were dried out. Mine, that's how mine were. They spent lacquer lube, like jelly, like, there's petroleum jelly in my eyes. I couldn't blink. Okay, so I noticed his legs moving. And I've told some of you the story, and some of you have reiterated it because it's so powerful. When I saw his leg moving, I said, Bradley, if you know I'm here, and I'm with your mom, and I'm going to be with you every step of the way to figure out how you can get home for a day to go see your brothers, and we're going to start that journey. If you want me to do that, raise your leg. And Sarah, his mom, sitting there, and she knew he was in there for 3 years. And Bradley lay there, no motion, no eyes, no nothing. And all of a sudden, that leg of us hit the ceiling. It's like he's there, and Sarah's dancing around and hollering and hooting. And months later, we were able to get the Office of Indian Affairs and Medicaid, and it was like a big congressional act to get him home for one day. We got a van with the lift on it. Me and a young gal I mentored who had cerebral palsy, her and I got to drive him with the nurse, and we drove him back to Shiprock. And 300 people showed up, his teachers, his principal, all of his family. So we went to Governor Johnson. The first time talked about quality of life and how different people would be. And it was kind of like, yeah, that pat on the head, but I'm dealing with state budget, right? So when you hear me talk about adding the economic factor in it, I've learned throughout the 30 years. The next time we went in to see Governor Johnson, we were armed with our economic impact study that we had the university help us with. We looked at how much the state was spending on institutions. 90%. All of our Medicaid money, all of our tax dollars, the biggest budget in our state budget was going to institutions. And we said, we want to do it where we can have a personal care option. We can move people out of nursing homes if they choose. They hire and fire their own attendant, and they live in the community. It made sense to Governor Johnson from the economic standpoint, from a business solution. So Governor Johnson said, let's do it. We were one of the first states that knew that we could do a different shift in our paradigm on long-term care. So my little nonprofit really wasn't much there. We drove to Santa Fe, got it set up, got everything. We said, okay, we'll be the fiscal agent. I want you guys to listen. I want you to listen with your nonprofits. A lot of you have sent emails that you have nonprofits, you have 501c3s that you've never received funding for. Get out of that mindset of bake sale charities and think about it as a business corporation. We said to the state, okay, people coming out of nursing homes are not going to know how to be their own employer or how to deduct FICA and SUDA and FUTA and TUTA and all that kind of good stuff, right? So my nonprofit, your a corporation, I will charge a fee for service, and I'll be the fiscal agent. I'll teach them how to be their own employer. And I went to the legislature and I said, instead of us put all of our money into training CNAs, certified nursing assistants, to have a 3-month turnaround. So you can see those training dollars aren't going very far. Why don't we train the people with disabilities and seniors that are going to be living with it the rest of their life? Why don't we train them how to interview and hire and fire their own attendants? Doesn't that make sense? Isn't that a good business decision? So, okay. So I said to Medicaid, it's very simple. We went to lunch. I handed them a letter, the director of Medicaid, and said, how about we do this? Every person we get out of a nursing home will charge $200 per month per person, and we'll do all the fiscal work, and we'll train them on how to be an employer. Made sense. Okay. 6 months later, 200 people out of nursing homes, 200 people that were able to take that money and redirect it and hire their cousin, their aunt, their sister, their neighbor, someone that would love them, that would give them the support they needed. And they were living now in the community. Little tiny rural New Mexico, we created 400 jobs. That's amazing. In places like Sheep Springs, Yatahay, places you've never heard of, we were creating jobs. And also, now instead of spending $50,000, $100,000, $400,000 of our taxpayer dollars on Medicaid to warehouses, it was $14,000 a year, and we created a job. And when I go to Santa Fe and testify and take them with me, little Mary, 88-year-old grandma, who hired her daughter, who was 70 years old and blind, the state was flipping out. Oh my gosh, quality assurance. Oh my gosh, we're going to get in trouble by the feds. 24-hour. And we said, when have you ever gone in a nursing home and seen someone sitting there 24 hours a day, right? And we showed a picture of little Mary tied to her wheelchair, a bar, in a white man's hospital gown with their hair draped down. And in their culture, their buns are significant. And now having her stand up in front of the committee, and they're looking at that picture, and they're listening to her, and now she has her hair in a bun. She's got her velvet, her squash blossom, and she's talking about what it's like to be home teaching her grandkids Navajo and telling stories and sharing the culture. And so her daughter said, I was on welfare and now I have a job. Da-ding, da-ding, dollars, right? Oh, and Grandma Mary, she would be in the hospital at least once a month because of a bed sore, or she would fall. It's been a year and she's never been to the hospital. Da-ding, cha-ching. See all those dollars? So we've taken people that were on welfare. They're now taxpayers. Another one testified. She was on TANF. She was getting $500 a month for childcare, right? Our government money, our taxpayer dollars. And now she's so proud. She gets paid as an attendant. She's created a job, right? And now she's paying a local child care provider that money that her daughter's in. Look at the economics, how deep it goes when you bring a business common sense solution to a system that is so broken. So to see Gary Johnson, to know that he led with us in changing that paradigm. And there's industries that did not want this. The pharmaceutical companies, the nursing home industry, we were a threat to them. Little tiny New Mexico, little tiny nonprofit. Not because of that. We were changing the mindset of the way Americans are doing long-term care. How many of us want to put our mom and dads in nursing homes? How many of us want to go to a nursing home? So as we led in that, and as then it was announced by the federal agency, Health and Human Services, that we were the first state in the nation that was spending more money on community-based services than institutions. We were the first state in the country that had a positive Medicaid budget. Think about what we could do right now, this group right here, this group with us today, 200 people. Just think of what we could do with redirecting funding and doing that same kind of things where we bring these military guys and gals home with the kind of determination, the perseverance, the dedication. They're so respectful to bring that home to rebuild America, to bring that home to be a mentor to our kids and our future generations. I really want us to spend today to share what we did with people with disabilities and redirecting funding in the nursing home, redirecting funding so we could be part of the American dream and contribute, and now taking those same steps and doing that to redirect funding to empowering veterans, military personnel to lead the way and let us know what services you want to create, what kind of support you need. When you come home with PTSD, when you come home with all that trauma, what about neurofeedback? What about some of the things we learned with traumatic brain injury? You know, I was a president of the National Brain Injury Association. 25 years ago, our first grant was with the VA. And now to see the VA going down a path that we in this country, 54 million Americans with disabilities, that's a huge minority group. We change that path. Let's take that step forward and let's don't go down that same path with the veterans. So those of you that are working on projects with your nonprofit, think about how you can bring veterans in and have them lead, put them in leadership positions, let them help design where the next step needs to be for us. So Derek, today I just feel very, very passionate that we have a group with us today, that it's time to help lead that revolution in bringing our folks home to rebuild America. So Derek, I know I was going to have you talk and stuff, but man, after seeing Governor Johnson and seeing what we did, and you guys, it was so cool, Derek, when I told him, I said, I just want to thank you because you helped open a door that now I'm able to teach millions. Our movement, not only in New Mexico, but around the country, has such a successful track record. But what we did in New Mexico helped open the door in that paradigm shift. And he looked at me and he said, no, I want to thank you, the movement, for stepping forward and putting this in front of me. It's you guys that made the impact. So I'm going to leave that with you for Q&A. It's you guys that are going to go out and lead the impact. So Derek, I didn't let you say a lot, but man, I'm revved up thinking about this weekend.
Yeah, I think that worked out quite well. So that was great. Okay, everyone, we are going to dive into now. We're going to dive into something else. We have a special guest with us.
Hey, Oh my gosh.
Hey,
Hey,
hey Sherry.
Oh my gosh, Brandon. I am so excited to introduce. I didn't know you were on. Why didn't you tell me you're on? I was going on for
no, that we were going to lead into that. We want to introduce everyone to Brandon Johnson. So,
Yay.
well, Mom, go ahead and introduce, and we're going to bring Brandon on to talk a little bit today.
Oh, Brandon, this just makes my whole weekend. You guys, I'm so honored to introduce Brandon to you. If I would have known you were on before, sorry, Brandon, I was talking. Um, Brandon, he's such a gift in our lives. And when you look at Purpose Friday, Sherry, friends and family, Brandon's friends and family, and he's one of the co-founders, a builder of the Power of Purpose. Brandon is a purpose consultant. He's talked to so many of you, and so many of our mentoring students, Brandon, talk about you at the beginning mentoring him and bringing in the veterans and talking like with Alan, talking about how you can build a beautiful community, bringing veterans in leadership ways. And so knowing what Brandon is bringing to people, when we first met Brandon and we were connected in such a great way, Brandon is one of the few people I've talked to that's new to us that understood the movement. Man, Brandon led Greenpeace. He understands the power of a movement and making change. And then finding out about what we were getting ready to launch with the Power of Purpose, Brandon said, I want to be part of that. He sees the bigger picture. He sees where we can go with this. And then to find out that Brandon served in the military for us. He fought for our freedom. And Brandon, as a young entrepreneur coming back home, seeing the kind of things we need to have happening, knowing the power of movements, and then joining the Power of Purpose to come in and help lead in the movement. So when Derek and I talked to Brandon last week, Brandon and I have had a lot of conversations, and it's so cool because you guys, each one of you that he meets with, he's so vested in. I mean, he comes to us and it's like, wow, I talked to them, and you know what could happen here, and you know what, it's cool how they can open doors here, and talking about Bill and Leo and all of you guys. And so Brandon has a really sincere heart, but he's also got the brains to lead the movement. So when I was in San Diego last month, and Brandon came by one evening, instead of going to dinner, we had all been working so hard, he said, I'm going to a nonprofit meeting in San Diego for veterans. He's one of the ones that really is the one to lead us, you guys. When Derek and I talked to him last week about Purpose Fridays and the one coming up today, we said, Brandon, it's time for you to step up and talk about what the needs are. And let us facilitate, let us embrace, let us surround you with support, and let Brandon talk to us today about what kind of services and supports. And Brandon, I'd love to have you share a little bit about your journey and your purpose, and take us down a pathway that we can all hear from you, we can all learn from you what our next steps need to be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Sherry, for the introduction. Um, First, I just wanted to say thanks everybody so much for being on the call. I'm terribly sorry. I had some pretty big computer problems here, but I wanted to thank everyone for being on the call, and just wanted to give myself an introduction, a little bit about my background, where I'm from, and working in the military and working within the veteran movement. So I'm originally from the Midwest. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, and I graduated high school in 2003. And right after 9/11, I was kind of contemplating going to college, and I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do and where I was going with my life. And I met this recruiter, and he just kind of challenged me and said, "Hey, do you want to do you want to make a difference? Do you want to serve your country? Do you want to stand and be a proud American?" And I guess I took that challenge, and it was kind of funny because he kind of courted me to be in the military, and he definitely did his job very well. So I enlisted in 2004, February 2004. I was an intelligence Marine, so I served in the Marine Corps for about 5 years. And I know intelligence Marine sounds kind of like an oxymoron a little bit, but I was that was my job, that was my duty. So I did pretty well on my testing coming into the Marine Corps, and scored pretty decent, and that's where they put me into the position as an intelligence Marine. And after 9/11, the country was really kind of looking to how do we handle this massive thing, this massive incident that just happened to us, and that was really my calling to joining the Marine Corps, and wanted to serve, wanted to protect my country, wanted to fight. And this weekend, more than anything, is July 4th, and this is where we celebrate our freedoms. This is where we celebrate so many other Americans before us that fought for this country, and that's really where I kind of had to step away from myself and step away from going to college, and felt that call to action to protect our country and to serve. So that's when I joined the Marine Corps. And it was one of the greatest experiences in my life. I served from 2004 to 2009. I was the senior intelligence analyst for 2nd Battalion, 4th Marines. We deployed several times to Iraq, and my job was basically to provide intelligence to the ground units. So I was in an infantry battalion, and to support them as best that I could, whatever needs that they had on the battlefield, real time. And I was also a collections manager, so I worked with collections, which is collecting intelligence. So if you know about any of the UAVs or anything like that, that was my job and my role, usually held by a staffed officer, so somebody that went to college and was an officer and has been in the military for a while. I held a billet as a corporal, which I was only in the Marine Corps for about 2-3 years. So I held an officer's billet just because of the shortage that we had within our unit. And it was a great experience, great learning experience. I ended up receiving 2 awards while I was in the Marine Corps, and I loved what we did. The big turning point in my life, though, was not in the military, though. To serve my country, that was one of the greatest things that I ever did, and I feel very proud and I feel very honored to have the possibility to do that. But the really big turning point was when I exited the Marine Corps, and I felt very honored that I was able to provide that protection and that service, and stand up and make that difference, and wear the Marine Corps uniform. I still have part of my uniform in my room. I have my my 2 awards, Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medals, hanging up in my room. But the big turning point was when I exited the Marine Corps, and I realized with my own personal struggles and my struggles with my friends that veterans just you join the Marine Corps, you join the military, the armed forces to this higher calling to stand up, to make a difference, to make a change, and you think that carries over. But when you exit the military, you are just another number. It seems like it's perceived that you're just another number, and you just get whatever your rated kind of service. You don't get that prestige that you had, as serving in the military. You don't, when someone comes up to you, when I would wear my uniform, and I would go home and visit my friends and family and wear my uniform, people would come up to me and thank me for my service, and I felt so honored and said, "Thank you so much. I appreciate that." It's almost kind of that celebrity status, as being a Midwestern boy from Cleveland, Ohio. That felt great. But you exit the military, and now I have long hair and a beard, so people definitely do not know that I served in the Marine Corps. But you exit the military, and the services that are provided for our veterans through the VA are abysmal. And through my own experiences, it took me 16 months to get my disability compensation. I served, and I'm a disabled veteran myself. I was injured, so I served in Al Anbar, and we took some mortar fire, and I got injured, and it took me 16 months. And in those 16 months, I went to doctors, I went to outside facilities, and I have a ruptured disc and some severe back issues. And it took me over 16 months to apply to be able to get the services that I deserve for my service. And that's a good case. There's service members that have served that are in much worse situations, and it's taken them over 24 months, a couple years. Someone that serves our country and is disabled from their service gets out, and they're waiting years to get their disability claims. That's just abysmal. And through my own struggle, and then also through my friends' struggles, realizing what my friends went through, I stopped and said, something's got to change. I was an intelligence Marine, and then when I got out, I was a civilian contractor. So I was an instructor, and for those of you that are on the call that I've worked with before, I probably told you, I was a Marine instructor, so I taught intelligence operations. So I trained Marines and I trained students. So that's why I love what I do here, because I get to do that training element and that coaching element, but also I get to bring in the nonprofit side. But I use my experience as being a Marine instructor, and I love doing that. I trained about 2,500 students on intelligence operations, on biometric intelligence, some pretty advanced systems, and it was great. And I was getting all these young men and women ready to go to combat. But the thing was, is I just kind of foresaw training them, having them go overseas, and then having them come home and exit the military, and there was no infrastructure. There's no support system for them. They would just exit the military, and there was nothing there. So that's really where a light bulb kind of switched in my head, and I said, you know what? I had this call to action. I had this call to service, to serve my country, to make a stand, to make a difference, protect my country. And I did that, and I loved it. But at the same time, our veterans, the people that are serving our country, do not have adequate service. Do not have adequate service. 1 in 6 veterans, or 1 in 6 people that are sleeping on the street are veterans. How is that even possible in a country where you know, we hold our military in the highest regard. You know, people get their bumper stickers, support our troops, but really, what are they doing to support our troops? They don't know the real-time needs, and it's not something that's really talked about in the media, but it's a massive disparity in how we treat our veterans and the services that we had. So that's really where I started on the side while I was working as a contractor. I started working with veteran nonprofits. I started going to meetings and meeting up with people in San Diego. And I really wanted to make a change, that same call to service that I had to serve our country. I wanted to serve our country and serve the people that served our country, because they need service more than anybody. You know, they took it upon themselves. The people in the military is such a disenfranchised community. Less than 1% of the American population is veterans. So a very small population put their uniform on and wanted to serve their country. And for them to do that and get out and exit the military and not have adequate service, not have the infrastructure that they need to be successful, that's really where I noticed that there was a massive gap. But I wanted to lead a movement, and that's really why I resonate with Sherry and what the work that we do here, is because the movement that she created within the disability movement. And we talk a lot about, me and Sherry have talked a lot about how we can create a movement for veterans, because there's thousands in San Diego alone. There's, I think, over 1,000 to 2,000 veteran nonprofits in San Diego alone. But what are they really doing? They're not connecting with each other. They're so separate. And a lot of the work that we focus on here, the connecting piece, when you connect with community leaders, when you connect with other nonprofits, that's really where you can lend other services. You can get a different perspective working with them. And that's one of the things that I love about how Sherry led the movement with disability. You know, she brought in people with disability and had them lead the charge and had them lead the movement. And that's what I want to do within the veteran movement and and how we can take care of our veterans. And one of the bigger moments in my life that really kind of rocked me was I was a civilian contractor, and then I kind of had a consciousness change to where I said, okay, I was serving the military, I served our country, and that was great, but I have a higher calling, and I want to make a change within nonprofits, and that's when I exited my career within the military. I had a pretty good career where I was an instructor. I created intelligence schools or training systems within the military, within the Marine Corps, and that was great. But I feel like my impact, just prepare these young men and women to go to war, and to have them come home and not have the services and the infrastructure to be successful citizens, you know, that's really where my call to step away from my career was. And I stepped away from there, and then I started working in nonprofit, and I've worked in nonprofit for about 5 years as a fundraiser, as an organizer, as a leader in sub-movements. And as Sherry said, I worked for a couple organizations. I worked for an environmental organization where I took over the office, you know, took that military training, and I ran the office for an environmental organization, and ended up raising over $1.2 million in about a year's time for that organization, which has never happened. And that was a great moment for me. But while I was working there was another young gentleman that I worked with named Tyler Wilkerson. And Tyler was probably one of the brightest lights that I've ever experienced. He was one of the nicest human beings that you can encounter. One of those kind of guys that would give you the shirt off his back and say, "Hey, does that shirt fit?" Do you need anything else? How can I help you more? And, you know, he felt that same call to action, not just to serve the country, because he was a Marine too, and he was an infantryman, which I've worked with several of them. But he had that call to service to protect our country, but then also had the foresight to realize it doesn't just end there with the service. There's other veterans that are suffering out there. So he worked in nonprofit as well. And I met him, and Tyler was one of my very close personal friends, and just one of those great people that you meet, and just a very bright light that shined. And it was kind of hard to notice because he didn't let anyone know, but he suffered severely from post-traumatic stress syndrome, or PTSD. And he had a lot of issues mentally that he didn't really allow people, because there's the pride in service. There's the pride in what people do in the military. And they don't want to talk about the things that they're facing, their demons that they face, because there's a stigma there that you don't talk about that. You serve your country, that's it. You come home, you get a job, and and the rest is you put to bed. But he was battling a lot of demons. This guy deployed to Iraq 2 times, went to Ramadi, which was a pretty high intensive action area, and then deployed to Afghanistan with his twin brother too. His twin brother was in the military with him in the same unit. Deployed to Iraq, pretty high intensive area, and then went to Afghanistan. And his unit had one of the highest casualty rates, and they also now, several years later, have the highest suicide rate. So, long story short, Tyler was one of my very close personal friends, and on last year, in August, I think it was August 7th, he ended up losing his battle to PTSD, and he took his own life. And that right there was one thing that shook my entire foundation. And it was one of the things in my life that, you know, when something happens, that you take a lot of respective time to kind of look internally to understand why did this happen. Well, Tyler had all of those mental issues and didn't feel that he could reach out to anybody, and he did reach out. He reached out to the VA. As a Marine, as a service member, you hold your hierarchy, you hold the infrastructure in a high regard. So he went to the VA months and months before he took his own life, and he actually went to the mental health facility within the VA, which I've been to as well, and it's just the services that they provide. They are one of the biggest mismanaged parts of our government, highly underfunded and heavily mismanaged. He went to the mental health facility, and this is what they told him. They told him to write down what his issues are. To write down what his issues are, and then come in and submit what he's facing. And then after that, it would take a couple months to talk to a psychiatrist. What does that even do? When you're in the state and you have post-traumatic stress syndrome, and I do as well. I'll just be honest with the call here. I do as well, and that's something that I face. But when you're in that state, there's the fog. It's almost like the fog of war. You cannot. It's an immediate action. You need immediate attention. It's almost like you're bleeding out, and you need somebody to apply a tourniquet or some immediate attention. You need someone to talk to. And if you don't have the infrastructure, and somebody says, write down your problems, write down the thoughts you have, and then in a couple months we'll address those because you're just another number here. What does that say to you as a human being? So so that was really something that shook me to my core, and that's why I really pushed myself to step up and to, you know, and Sherry said I go to meetings and I go to, you know, meet with veteran nonprofits. You know, that's stuff that I do on the side to while I'm working within this movement, and that's why I love the work that we're doing at the Power of Purpose. We're influencing the influencers. You know, that one of the mentoring students we have, and this is something cool that Sherry told me about, and I'm not sure if he's on the call, but he, you know, he watched the webinar, heard Sherry's story, and Sherry's story obviously is very moving, and she's got a great background, and she's been through a lot of those life-changing movements, but she used that as an empowerment. But one of the things I loved our mentoring student said was he watched everything, and he talked with me, and I talked to him about what he wants to do and the impact he wants to have, and, you know, it's specific to that individual. And he said, you know what? Why not me? Why can't I make a difference? Why can't I make a change? I'm gonna make a change. I'm not special, but who is special? You know, Martin Luther King, Desmond Tutu, people that have created movements. Look at the adversity that this planet has faced, not just this country, but people that have faced extreme adversity, kept fighting forward, knew that they had a higher calling, and those are the people that I look to. And, you know, having that, you know, why not me mentality, I can make a difference and I can make a change. That is those are the people that we need desperately to stand up and fight with us. That's the kind of call to action and call to service that we need people to stand up, wake up, and realize that there's so many issues. We lose 22, and this is very conservative, we lose 22 veterans a day to suicide. A day. That's something that I was just, that kind of like set me back when I first heard that. So let that sink in. We lose 22 veterans a day to suicide, and that was a study that the Department of Veterans Affairs conducted, I think, in 2012. 22 veterans a day, and they only actually surveyed half the country. So they, I actually think it's closer to 30. Oh, I think it's over 30, if I really had to guess. But either way, no more than, if it's one, that's an abysmal figure. That's an abysmal stat. So we lose over 22 veterans a day to suicide because the VA just doesn't have the assets, doesn't have the funding, and is heavily mismanaged. When you get, you know, just like any big corporation and big company, there's a lot of politics involved. There's a lot of moving parts, and it's difficult for them to remain close to their principles. That's where the folks that are on the call, that's where you can step in. That's where you can stand up, and you can make a change, and you can make a difference in this country. You know, and right now we need you more than ever, and we need you to be fierce and have intensity in your conviction to, you know, not just get this training that you saw online, but to want to make, so you want to make that difference, you want to make that impact. We need people to stand up. We need people to fight tooth and nail, because if you're losing one veteran a day, well, that's just something that I cannot handle. That's something that I cannot deal with, and I'm sure that you can't either. So that's why we need folks to step up and to make the change, and to provide housing, to provide employment opportunities, to provide. And one of the things I think that the veteran community needs desperately is just infrastructure. And that's, if you give a service member the parameters of, you know, this is who you report to, or this is who you know, this is where you can get your services. They don't have that. That's not something that's provided. So that's where you can step up. You can establish a nonprofit, and it doesn't have to just be veterans. Maybe you work within housing or employment, but you can touch the veteran community in the things that you do, and that's really where learning not only this, how to start the nonprofit, but how, having that conviction in the things that you do. That's really where you can make a difference, and you can step up, and you can make a pretty big impact in a young the young men and women that serve our country, because they exit the military and they get out, and right now, our country, we're kind of coming back from a recession. Some folks might say we are. Some folks, it depends on what side of the aisle you are on, I guess. But the thing is, the thing that still remains is we have young men and women that went and fought for our country, just like we've had for the last 230 plus years, that have fought for our country, fought for our freedoms. Yeah, our country has had some ups and downs, and what doesn't. But the principles that we stand for, this is why we love our country. And to have those folks serve so we can have those principal freedoms and those inalienable rights, we have to take care of them. We have to. If we're just going to send people blindly to war and not protect them and not take care of them, then what kind of country are we? Yeah. That's something that we have to ask ourselves. So for those that are on the call that want to work within veterans, veteran community and affect and make change, that's what we need is folks to step up and to make that change. And I guess Sherry, I don't know if there's a time for the Q&A, but I wanted to give a little bit of my background and kind of my service and what I see the biggest issues are. And there's issues within housing, and there's issues within employment and just life services. But one of the biggest issues that I see and I personally have faced is suicide. So that's and it's a very dark topic. But for someone to do that, there's obviously, and for it to happen so frequently, there's obviously a massive problem there. So we need folks to step up. So I hope that I kept the time. I hope I stayed within the time here, Sherry. But I'm not sure if you want to have any questions or anything. But I guess I'll kick it back over to Sherry.
Brandon, that was phenomenal, and I had to turn off the webcam at one time when you were talking about Tyler. We need to be up in arms. Suicide, we did a grant, Brandon, years ago in Iowa, and we took their study from the Iowa VA, and it was that a suicide, they had a suicide every so many minutes. It was like every 40-some minutes, and yet nobody was talking about it. And when the Secretary of the VA in California came down a few months ago and did a little 4-hour presentation with his deputy dogs, and it was great. But I asked, what about the issue of suicide? And we weren't going to talk about that. That's not being addressed. So Brandon, thank you for sharing something that's so hard, but we gotta address it. We gotta address it, Brandon. A friend of mine, really close friend, got her doctorate's degree, or she got a physician assistant degree, and part of her intern was to serve at the VA hospital, and she got a degree in psychiatry, and she spent 6 months and said she cried every day. She just told me this just a few weeks ago, and said that it would go in, and she said it was like a cattle run. She had 15 minutes, had no history on them. There's no computer, no, up to speed. And every 15 minutes it was like a cattle run. Just run them in, have 15 minutes, don't even get to know them, don't even know about who they are, and they've been waiting, some of them like 3 years, just to get in. And she had to walk away because of the sadness. So Brandon, it's you, your colleagues, you guys are the ones that can get up and talk about it with such authority, and we can surround you. And I hear over and over, Brandon, with some of Natty's friends, suicide. You know, two of one of her friends, two of his troop have committed suicide out of 5 of them. I mean, when you think about one every hour, we need to step up. So Brandon, thank you for sharing. Thank you for opening your heart. Thank you for not only your service then, but your service now. What you're doing to open up people's eyes, to open up this conversation that is hard and it is dark, but it's time. We can't allow this anymore, and we should be up in arms. When Ed walked around last week and saw us being handcuffed and being taken away because we stayed and stood for what we believed, it's time for us to take it that next level. So, Derek, you can open it up for Q&A. I'd love to have, while Brandon's here.
You bet. I want to reiterate that sentiment, Brandon. That was truly amazing, and thank you for sharing for the group and everyone. That's what we're talking about, kind of with the theme on the 4th of July weekend. As we look to celebrate that, we also take time to pause to within our group here, within our movement, about this very thing where Brandon left off about that gap and how we can fill that gap. How can we serve those that have served us so bravely and so honorably? And that's why we're all here. So kind of these first questions, I'm just kind of jump around a little bit. Have come in from, with Kenneth. Kenneth has a comment that's saying it's been a struggle to offer and provide digital retraining and getting people to work together on the veterans front. So want to make a difference, and that to provide training, employment, education, and he's feeling that no one will listen. But right here, Kenneth, as you'll know, everyone that's on this call with us today, is that everyone here is listening. And with our movement, we can get a lot of people to listen. And that's really what we do. And that need all boils down to, across the board, beyond veterans and housing and people in need, is typically outside of the spec of government that's there. It's broken systems. What we talked about earlier, it was mentioned before about funding and redirecting funding. It's really about taking that and fixing broken systems. Go ahead.
And I'm going to add to that. Was it Jonathan?
Kenneth.
Kenneth, we had no voice in the beginning either. And that's what we've been talking to Brandon about, the peer support. You know, when we were looked at as those handicapped, we weren't even called disabled then, or we were looked at as victims, traffic waste. That's what our own industry called us. So we had no voice. No one listened. But by us coming together and building that peer support, where we were safe together and we supported each other, and then we could go out and rally as a group from there, and not promoting civil rights disobedience or that, but you come and build that coalition, and you build that grassroots groups. You do whatever it takes to be listened to. When you have 1 hour, one of you committing suicide, less than every single hour, every day, That's acceptable. You know, when we had folks laying in nursing homes, rotting away, it was unacceptable. And so we did whatever it took to be heard. There comes a point where you say, no, this can't happen. And so we would try testifying, or we try meeting leaders. And there's so much more to all of this. We learned to not be naive advocates. We learned that the pharmaceutical companies and the nursing home corporations are very powerful. And the legislators and mayors and governors either own interests, own a nursing home, their investments are in nursing homes. There's a lot more to this. The VA, all the contractors that we have, who owns long-term care homes, who own, you've got to become very savvy advocates. We had a watchdog group. When I first moved back home to New Mexico and Governor Richardson came into his term, I'd worked with him in Washington, D.C. He was a congressman. He sent me flowers when I'd been at a town hall meeting in Farmington, New Mexico. First time I'd ever gotten out and driven since my accident. And I heard he could help us and bring services to people. I didn't know. I'd never met with congressmen, but I went out there and was in my wheelchair and had my patch on my eye and couldn't talk very legible, but I knew I had a purpose. And I said, we're going to help people that are in comas and people that are paralyzed from the neck down, and we heard you could help. And he said, I want to meet with you. And so he brought his whole staff in and sat with me and talked about the different things we could do. And that way that night on the way home, I got hit by a drunk driver. And he sent flowers to the hospital the next day and his staff over. So he very strongly knew me, very intimately. When I became president in Washington, D.C., then he was the one that helped me work behind the scenes and knew which committee to navigate to. So for 20 years. But as he became governor in New Mexico, and I had been here for 2 years, and we just created that personal care option where it was an entitlement. If you were on Medicaid, you had that choice. No waivers, no waiting lists, none of that junk. We set it up. We created it. So now they automatically could live at home if they wanted, right? The nursing home industry, we had 5 lobbyists in little tiny New Mexico with black credit cards and their feet on the governor's desk, and nobody even knew we were state before. People would ask if I need a visa or can I drink the water, and I'd say, no, New Mexico, right? Now all of a sudden we have this lobbyist. So when Governor Richardson came into office, the first thing he was going to do was cut the personal care option. Why? Our state had a positive budget because of it. People were living in the community. We had created 14,000 jobs by then. That made no sense. But our watchdog group in D.C. showed where his first or second largest contributor to his PAC 527, because he was running for president the day he came to New Mexico, right? His biggest funder was the nursing home industry. He was pressured to shut down the program that was threatening changing the mindset in this country. So we weren't naive. We understood that there's a lot behind some of the things seem so common sense. Why aren't they? Well, there's a political agenda around it. So get knowledgeable about that, because knowledge is power. And I'm telling you, when we knew that, and we could call all the media in, we could say we wanted to have a meeting with him, he would meet with us. We had a rally in the Capitol. We had 400 people with disabilities and seniors at the Capitol in a rally, and he was going to come down and do the keynote. It was during the session. We'd already sent his invitation, got on schedule, everything. 5 minutes later, 10 minutes later, 30 minutes later, I was up front with another colleague keeping the energy going. He never showed up. So I said, keep the energy going, I'll go upstairs. I went upstairs to the governor's office, and he sent the Secretary of Health down with me and said, there's been a state emergency, I can't come down. So she came down, she started talking. Now our whole community knew he was cutting the program that allowed us to live in our own homes and have control of our lives. And a whole rotunda bursted out with me up front with Secretary Hyde, wasn't me leading it, and they were saying, we want Bill, we want Bill. The legislators were looking over the balcony. They were all coming out of committee hearings. All we wanted to do was for him to look us in the face and tell us why he was cutting it. Why all of us were going to have to go back into nursing homes. We couldn't get him. The reporters from the big Fox and CNN and came down and said, you need to know, he's been out there talking about the crisis in health care. A state emergency. So you know what? We went into 200 of us, we split up, and we went and sat in his office. And we said, we're not leaving until we can meet with him. The reporters were there. We, as advocates, said, you need to know why this is happening. That's how you're going to make change, you guys. Be knowledgeable. Start looking at the VA. Look in California, whatever state, Ohio, whatever state you're from. Look at your Veterans Administration. Go in and look at their state website. Look at your state legislative. Who oversees your Veterans Committee? Almost every state legislative body, you have a Veterans Affairs Committee that oversees your Veterans Administration. What's happening with that money? Look at the budget. I was in Pennsylvania, and we went to the Capitol, and we met with the leader, I think it was a senator, for the Veterans Committee. And they were spending hundreds of millions of dollars on the long-term care homes. As we talked about redirecting and the nonprofits we had in place that could provide employment services, it makes sense to them. They're dealing with state budgets. Many of our legislators have become financially free as real estate investors. They've invested well. They understand the economics. So go in knowledgeable and take that mess and bring folks with you. Go, you know what I'd really recommend, what we did with some Navy SEALs is, how many of you guys, Brandon, you and your group, how many of you have gone into the long-term care homes? They're in San Diego, they're in Ohio, in Iowa. You know, when I met with the VA secretary in Iowa a few years ago, and I had one of my mentoring students who is a veteran himself, who is setting up an incubator to teach veterans how to create their own businesses so they could fulfill the contract, the mandate that Congress passed a bill that said 5% of all government contracts, state, federal, local, must go to veteran-owned businesses. There aren't enough veteran-owned businesses. So here's Steve leading the way with his nonprofit. He's a veteran. And we go in and meet with this gentleman, and I tell him my story. I tell him how I had a brain injury and how that I've now been to Walter Reed. They're calling me back. It's going full circle. How I did a mini-series with the Veterans Administration on traumatic brain injury. How that they're saying more folks are coming home with TBI than all disabilities combined. So I'm being brought back into that world. And as we're sitting there telling the story about how we want to redirect funding, we want to help the veterans not go down a path we started down, he started crying. He literally started crying, and he said, "You've been an angel sent." And he said, "You need to know what just happened, where I'm coming, this emotion." He said, "We just went to our legislative session, and all the presidential candidates have been here, and they know all about it." And he said, "We went, and we have two divisions in the VA. One is long-term care home, and one is community supports. He oversees the community supports. So he wanted $5 million, I think it was, to do an employment training center to get his. He's a veteran. He wanted to get these young kids, Brandon, like you're talking about, back out into the world to bring their skills and rebuild and help us. And the long-term care division had asked for $100 million to build another wing on the long-term care home. And he said, "I don't even like going in there. Nobody likes going in there. That's where we stick people to die." And he said, "None of us go in there." And he said, "I got nothing, and they got $100 million to build their wing for long-term care." Those are the kind of things that are happening all over our country. The Brandons, you guys should be up in arms and say no more, and we'll be there with you. But to go to Las Vegas and to meet with the Veteran Services and the City of Vegas, all the housing authority, they're in that big fancy building, you know, the high rise, and so we're meeting with them up there talking about housing funding and stuff. And then we go over to meet with Veteran Services. It's way on the other side of town in a run-down, boarded up, closed down shopping center that looks horrific. And you walk up, and there's guys laying on the sidewalk. There's people just hurting. And we go in, and there is literally a post office, little round thing with the numbers on it, and little chairs that are like those little fold-up chairs that everybody's sitting in and has a number waiting to be called. And we go back and meet with the director, and she's very emotional because she said they tore down Tent City because they don't want it to look bad for our reputation for economic and tourism, right? And now they have nowhere. And the leadership is saying, well, if we tear it down, the veterans won't keep coming here because of the weather. And she said, my budget has been cut to nothing. And my staff now, by 10 o'clock in the morning, have to decide who gets to eat, who gets medicine, who's going to lay under the bridge and die, because they've slashed our budget. You guys, I hear it all over this country. And now I hear Brandon talking about his friend and talking about 22 a day. I know that's a long answer, Derek, but it's time for this country to stand up and say no more and bring some common sense solutions.
Yes, and to that point, Antonia Shopper with us had a comment that Brandon is amazing. I 100% second that one.
Yeah, me too. Third it. And he's part of our family now, the Power Purpose and our family. Once you join the Power Purpose, you're part of our family. So we're so proud to have him with us.
Yes, and this next question from Barbara.
I'm honored.
Barbara could be directed to both of you, Mom and Brandon. Barbara asks, what is the best step to get going with helping veterans? I have tried to talk with different agencies and doctors within the VA. Want to look at redirecting this funding mostly with housing and homeless. Want to use disabled vets, help organize them to bring change.
I got a couple of ideas, Brandon, and I know you do. That a friend of mine that worked in the VA hospital for an intern, she said what she always wondered. She said, why can't we gather the people that come in there? She said they have a kitchen, kind of a little room. She said they gather there. You have a great group there, so why not start a peer support group? Why not go and meet with them and start talking about the advocacy? And so that's one of the ideas, is go where they are. And because this is not going to happen the way it should, unless we have them lead. Brandon, like Brandon share and let, Brandon rally the troops. What I did in San Diego, and I was telling Brandon about this, is on the boardwalk, a lot of homeless folks, and so I go up and talk to them. And there's a 7 to 11 where there are a lot of them gather around the trash can there. And so in the mornings I'd walk by there, and they have like their own little community. And I would talk to them, and majority of them were veterans. And so we talked about meeting at the library. Would they be open? It was like 2 blocks away. If I moved there, I said, would you guys be open to start meeting at the library? Heck yeah. So I think really the key is, Barbara, for you, for me, we'll listen to Brandon, find out where can we go, Brandon, to rally the support, give the support and the financials and everything, where we could support you guys in leading.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you said it. Go to those known areas where you can meet with those folks that have the ability to connect to the community within the veteran community. And one of the things that I've talked with Sherry about is to create, and I think that this would be great. One of the biggest hurdles that I see with the veteran community is they've been told for at least 4 years how to do this, where to go, where to be. So they've been driven by orders and action, and they follow that, and that's why we have such a great country, because they follow their orders. They step up, and they follow the history that we have, and they have that call to action. Now, I think that if we I think that if we use the discipline within the military that they have, but also one of the things that I think that is a big disconnect within the veteran community is there's no connection on the individual level. So one thing that I love about Sherry and the movement that she helped to create was within the disability community, it was all about the individual. How do we serve the individual that has a disability? How do we serve them the most? How are we going to do that? Through peer support, through several different areas. But one thing that really stuck out to me that Sherry mentioned was they brought on, one of their 4 key tenets was bringing on someone who's a veteran, or I'm sorry, someone with a disability, bringing them into the mix and having your board be 51% more, 51 over 50% having disability, or the community that you're serving. So connecting with veterans and there's a lot of different areas that you can do that. But connecting with veterans, bringing them into the mix, because when you connect to a veteran, no matter where, how you connect to a veteran, they're going to know other veterans in the community. They through, if it's just their friends, if they're not that active, but they're gonna know other veterans within the community, and they're going to know how to connect to them. So and then they're also going to know the real-time needs. I work with a veteran nonprofit here in San Diego, and one of the things that they do is they have fundraisers to bring in support and funding to help homeless veterans. And what they used to do was they would go out, they would do these fundraisers, they would bring in all this money, and then they would go out and go out into the community for the homeless population. They'd go downtown, and they would give them, whatever they thought they needed. But the thing is they don't know what they need. They don't know what they need. They don't live on the streets. They don't have that day-to-day struggle. So a very smart gentleman said, "Wait a minute. Let's stop. Let's find out what they really need. What do they need? Just let's go ask them, what do they need?" Yeah. And they went out and they surveyed and they asked these folks, and they brought them into the mix, and they found out that they needed ponchos, they needed a sleeping bag, they needed certain specific things, and they ended up coming up with a very cheap $30 kind of package per person. It was only $30, and they raised thousands of dollars, and they connected with the community, and now that's what they do a couple times a year. Before the winter, they'll go out, and we've gone out and go into the community. Actually, there was a little documentary they did about it, where someone came out and videotapes them going out into the community and connecting with folks and giving them this very much needed support with this $30 little package that they had. But they couldn't know that. They were giving them what they thought. And when you bring them into the decision-making process, and you bring them into, you bring in the community that you're serving into the process, you understand what they need, because it's extremely difficult to have those assumptions of what you think they need. So bringing them in is a very a key, crucial piece into being able to serve them the best that you want to. And I hope that answered part of the question.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, two good points there. If everyone heard that about looking at programs or within your organization that can help connect with them on an individual level, and also just incorporating that discipline they're normally attuned to for your outreach as far as reaching them. It's kind of following that order they've been trained to use.
And then Derek, I'll add on to that, and Brandon, see what you think. But one of the things that really fueled the disability movement is we started going to where people were, nursing homes, institutions. And so we would go, like the Bradley I told you about. He was my rock. When I'd be working with the governor and having to, work on the political thing, and I'd think, what am I doing? It was Bradley that was what kept me grounded. Bradley kept my fight alive. And so what we've been doing is having folks go into the long-term care homes. Go into, Barbara, go wherever you're from, go find out the long-term care home, and you can look up the VA and long-term care, and we've been getting some resistance. We went into one home, and there were mainly all young guys. Several of them been in Walter Reed, one of them for like 18 months, brain injury, and then they sent him there instead of letting him go home to Texas, and he had two little boys. It reminded me so much of my story. If they would have You know, I wouldn't be here right now if I would have had to go through that. And go talk to them, find out, go to those long-term care homes, and let's find out what do they want. And then you start building an agenda, advocacy agenda around that. Maybe they want to go home. Well, what do they need? Well, they need a ramp and they need an attendant. Well, why can't we see in Texas? Texas has an attendant care program. He'd fit in there. We can work with the Centers for Independence and get a ramp built. You know, so I can't encourage you guys enough not only to go where they are being warehoused, but it empowers them to be sitting with Thelma that couldn't talk and laid in a bed of pee and been there for 3 years, and to sit with her and write a letter and say, okay, we're going to write a letter to the senator. We're going to talk about what it's like to be here and you want to move out in the community, and then take her to the legislature, get a van with a lift on it. And by then she had a voice synthesizer that Serotonin Club had got. So even when we were in those long-term care homes, we started coming in and helping get them supports, getting her an electric wheelchair where now she could run into the nurses and have some independence, and then getting her a voice synthesizer so that she could wear a thing on her head and start talking, and for her to roll up onto the state legislative floor. And we had all these glowing reports. Man, we had the economics. We thought we were so hot and smart. And she rolls up in her electric wheelchair. She's looking at me, and she punches in, I want a home, real home, not nursing home. To this day, 20 years later, my legislative friend said that's one of the most powerful testimonies they ever heard. What became of that? Redirecting funding in Medicaid. She moved out and lived in her own apartment, had an attendant, is independent. But while she laid in that nursing home, she started gaining control of her life and seeing that she could be a part of the solution. So go to those long-term care homes, Brandon. Get folks going to those, and let's see where we can go from there.
Yeah, here's a good follow-up question on that. Just talking about, again the VA system being broken, a better way to help. So how can we serve vets better with a nonprofit to help with mental health services?
I got a lot of ideas on that because we have mentoring students that are doing it. We have a group in Ojai that have a nonprofit that they're doing complementary medicine, not alternative. They came from England, and in England it's called complementary medicine. They do energy healing, they do a lot of things, acupuncture, a lot of things that in the disability community we've known for 25 years. That's what's kept us well. That's what's prevented secondary conditions. Wasn't the medical model. So they got a grant to do a veterans pilot project. So bring in a different way of healing and wellness. Our mentoring student in Phoenix is working with a doctor that does neurofeedback in doing a veterans project. So neurofeedback in New Mexico, we did a pilot project with our Secretary of VA a few years ago with hyperbaric chambers. So again, you want to bring mental health. For what we did is in our peer support groups, the peers, we started coming together like Brandon was talking about. Brandon and his group coming together and sharing what works, what doesn't. And then together we would go and start like Medicaid. Medicaid was very medical model. And we all said, that's not working for us. And so we were able to, again, change Medicaid. We created the waiver to where we can use that money and pay for the things we know keep us well. So That's how you can go in and change the system in the mental health. There's so much out there in mental health besides a handful of drugs. Look at the nutrition. Look at going vegan. Look at raw juicing every day. Look at, we need to pay attention to that and not just give you pills that cause side effects. You have to take 2 more pills because of the side effects. Don't get me started on that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good, Brandon. Anything else to add to that one?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Um, and Sherry's exactly right. You know, thinking outside the box is and that's why what I love about how you can make the most effective change is really kind of taking a pause and taking a step outside of what you've been doing because it hasn't been giving you the success you want, is taking a step out and really understanding what your outcome that you want to have and how you can get that best outcome. And one of the things that I've talked to Sherry about, and one of the things that I think as far as mental health is, and you know, mental health is an issue that the entire country faces. You know, we live in a culture of fear, and we live in a culture of anxiety, and I think it's 1 in 4 Americans. I'm not sure where I've heard this, but I think roughly 1 in 4 Americans have some form of depression or anxiety. And if you turn on the TV at one point in time throughout the day or the week, you're gonna get bombarded by all of the things that are going on, and the companies that want you to be fearful so you can buy their product to fill a void, right? So I think that, you know, it's a veteran issue, but I think that it's also a societal issue. But one of the things that has worked and helped me personally is, you know, and I struggle with that myself. And one of the things that has helped me is to live with a purpose. Live with, you know, I have my passions and I have my thing, you know, what drives me and what moves me. But if I have that blockage, and that a lot of folks do, and I get that too as well. But if I have that blockage that's really stopping me from doing something, or, you know, just you kind of get in that cycle, and maybe folks can, you know, resonate that or understand with when you get into something, a repetitive pattern where it just keeps happening over and over, and you're kind of lost. One of the things that helps me to break out of that pattern is to live with a purpose and live with a passion, and working in nonprofit. So really trying to understand what their issue is they feel isolated. They feel disconnected. They feel like they can't, nobody understands, right? One of the greatest things that you can do with any issue that you have to feel fulfilled, to feel the passion. And that's why, you know, I just want to lend some gratitude to everyone on the call. Everyone on this call is taking time out of their day, taking time out of their, you know, busy life. There's a lot of stuff going on to want to make change. So, you know, you guys are the inspiration. So draw from your own inspiration. And you know, I'm so appreciative of everybody wanting to make change, and that's why I love this movement. Is everybody's here to make a difference and make an impact. You know, we're gonna do well. We're gonna do good for ourselves and our family, but at the same time, we're gonna make a difference and we're gonna make an impact. So as far as you know, stepping up to how you can give someone who has mental health issues the power, I think the biggest thing to do is provide them with the opportunity to live with purpose and to live with passion. So these young men and women signed a contract to serve our country, right? They did one of the most selfless acts that you can think of, and they served our country, and then went through some pretty horrific things, and now they're struggling. But the thing is they still have that call to action. They still have that purpose, but right now they're lost. They're so lost, and they don't know how. And with the climate in our country, they don't know how to. There's no manufacturing jobs. It's all went overseas. There's the jobs. The job opportunity is very a bleak situation. So it's hard by yourself, and it's hard when you have. It's even harder when you have that mental blockage. So I think that the best way to do that is empower them by giving back. Give them the opportunity to feel purposeful. And one of the things that I love, one of our mentoring students, Alan Jones, I'm not sure if he's on the call, but awesome individual. And we were talking about what he wants to do, and he has a soccer background. He's a soccer coach, he works for a company that does coaching in soccer, and he's been all over the world. He actually has done pretty cool things in third world countries, providing free soccer clinics to children. But we were chatting, and he said, I have this career built on, helping youth within soccer and within sports, but I also have a calling to want to help our veterans, and I don't know how I can integrate the two. I want to have like a camp, so to say, and I want to have an area where kids can come in, like inner city kids that don't have the opportunity. They're very disenfranchised with the opportunities that they have. I want to give them some services, and I want to take them out of the city and put them in a camp where they can learn, leadership skills and learn a lot of those skills that you would at a camp. Well, me and him were talking. And I said, well, Alan, why not have this camp that you're talking about? You have the passion there to help young men and women, and to help mold them to be powerful and to be successful. Why not use both communities and both populations? Have your camp be run by veterans. Veterans, not all. I don't know about all of them, but not all of them are sports driven, but all of them have that leadership skills, and a lot of them have the skills to go out into the wilderness and to live off of what you have. We go through specific trainings. I went to Bridgeport in California. Oh man, that was a tough training. It was in November, December time frame, and it was about -5 degrees, and we had to do winter training. So we have the training courses that we've done, and to for Alan's specific nonprofit that he wants to do, he wants to help inner city kids. Why not build that bridge? Have veterans feel empowered and feel like they're giving back themselves to the community. They can help these kids. They can come in there. But the thing is it's gonna be just as successful, and it's gonna be just as beneficial for the veteran to step up in that role and help these young inner city kids. It's gonna be more probably. Well, I don't know about if it would be more beneficial, but it would be just as beneficial for the inner city kid to have that opportunity, but as it would be for the veteran. So giving them the opportunity to be purposeful in their life, because they've lived with purpose, they stepped up, they had that call to action, and now they get out and they don't have it anymore. So giving them the opportunity to give back, or to live with purpose, and to live with their passion. I think that's one of the ways that we can help with mental health. And one more thing, kind of a longer answer, but one more thing I think would be very helpful is, Sherry is talking about, with the diet and the things that you do. I myself am a vegetarian. I have been for about the last year, and that really only happened when I started my work in the environmental movement. And I don't necessarily think eating meat is bad at all, but it's just a personal choice that I have. But I think that if we have disabled veterans, I think one of the greatest things, and one of the great things that we do here is the work within real estate, and getting real estate donated to fund and fuel your nonprofit, as a funding source. But also you can get real estate donated and have facilities where it's almost like an assisted living facility, where these veterans can live together, but have an organic garden to where they can go out. The best therapy that you can do is being close to the food that you eat, and putting your hands in the dirt and growing something and being a part of the life cycle of the planet. And that's one of the greatest things that you can do is be a part of that. And I think it's very therapeutic. So if we have care facilities, or you have a property that gets donated that's got 5 rooms, and you have 5 disabled veterans that are living in that property, have them live with a purpose and live with a passion, and live sustainably. Maybe there's solar panels, or so those are some of the things to kind of think outside the box to get their minds off of the mental health issue. You don't want to victimize them. You want to empower them. And that's what the problem is with mental health issues, is everybody victimizes them and says, "Oh, poor you." Yes, they're going through some tragic, horrible, horrific things. But to sit there and say, "Poor you," and let's talk about your problems and your issues. No, let's address those, but let's build purpose in your life. Let's get you back to where you were. You are an amazing individual. You've stepped up more than most folks in your peer group, and let's get you back to that point where you're living purposely and you're making a difference in your own life or in the lives of others. So I hope that kind of answer the question and provide a little insight there.
That was some excellent input. Absolutely. Another good follow-up here from Algernon. He asks, that's what I'd like to do. He is looking to start an incubator with training for veterans to develop their own business. And we actually have a little experience with some programs like this. So I will throw this one over to Mom here to elaborate a little more on that.
Oh, that's fantastic. I built an incubator system in New Mexico. I partnered with a community college. So you might go look up your Small Business Development Centers, SBDC. They're a great source. We got funding from the One Stop, from the Workforce Investment Act, and they do one stops. So start looking around, and our secretary of the VA in New Mexico, Derek, what was that, 8 years ago, he came to our training for the Power Purpose, then called the Power Grant Money. He came to our training, and he was president of the National Veterans Administrators. So in other words, he was president in all 50 states. All 50 VA directors came together. So he really had a pulse on what was going on. His baby and his passion throughout his term was he got the legislation passed in Congress to give contracts, 5% set aside, all contracts go to veteran-owned businesses. So that's phenomenal what you're doing to help set up veteran-owned businesses. When Secretary Garcia, he gave an example of a young man in Denver that he helped when this first came out. The city of Denver was doing sidewalks and this and that and other, and then the county, and so he helped this young man set up a business. It was veteran-owned, and then he subcontracted. He didn't do the cement, he didn't do the concrete, he didn't do the landscaping. He would hire people to subcontract, but it was veteran-owned, and he made $5 million his first year in business just from having those contracts. So there's such a shortage and such a phenomenal opportunity. Get with, and we did a set aside. Many of the businesses in the incubator were set up as nonprofit corporations. There's a national incubator conference. We went to one. There's one in Florida. They now have a separate committee on incubators for veteran businesses. So look them up. It's at the National Incubator Association or something. and many of the incubators themselves are set up as nonprofit corporations. So yeah, I've done a lot of work in that, and that's such a great opportunity right now here.
Okay, Kenneth has some follow-up here. Has anyone tried peer-to-peer digital communications amongst homeless veterans? And also, where can we get support for funding programs to help with retraining veterans in the San Francisco community?
Well, Kenneth, I think you need to be the one to step up and do the digital face-to-face with the homeless. That's an amazing idea. Funding, we've gotten funding. In Nebraska, one of our mentoring students, she's a farmer's wife. She was like, you know, all I've been is a farmer's wife, and then find out she's raised 5 kids, homeschooled, and there were doctors and lawyers, and she set up the first community center. She's amazing. So she started working with the veterans. We started taking youth into the nursing homes. In Nebraska, they had a huge population of World War II veterans. And so we were losing them. We were losing the history. And so did a program where she started taking youth into their nursing homes, and they started documenting the World War II veterans' stories, and we got funding from the Historical Society as part of the documentation. So we were empowering young kids and giving them that wisdom from our wisdom holders. At the same time, they were documenting and creating things. So there's a lot of ways for us. Brandon mentioned it. The most powerful, untapped resource to bring funding into a nonprofit is through charitable giving of real estate. We have a software program, the Power Free Real Estate, that'll help locate the donors with property, but that by far is a way to bring in the capital, the seed funding, to really, and I'm telling you, the people that have created wealth, that have assets and sitting there, to transfer real estate into a nonprofit that is serving veterans, boy, I'm telling you, a lot of folks I'm meeting with, billionaires, folks that have done very well, they're now saying, but what's my life about? What's my legacy? What am I going to be remembered for? And to be able to talk to them about donating some of their real estate to help fund your nonprofit, that you're working with veterans, they're going to be all over it. That's the biggest opportunity, your funding going through charitable giving of real estate.
Yes, and Kenneth is doing some really cool things here. He's actually won some competition to help people connect to their own gardens via mobile apps, and Health IoT, and launching healthier foods, environmental awareness, research grants. He was tying that into Brandon's comment about gardens. So very, very cool stuff.
Wow.
I'll fill these next couple of questions here just real quick. They're just more on the platform side. Sonia just had a quick question about, I thought this presentation was 2 hours. Sonia, again, welcome. If you're new with us, we tend to run long on our, put it lightly, on our trainings, because we like to get to everyone and deliver as much information as we can when you join us here as we get together. And also from Superstar Mentoring student Leo Urbanski. Just a question about this being available on the Nonprofit University website. Yes, it will be. These are recorded. These are also up for everyone else on our YouTube channel, soon to be on the group page on Facebook, as well as our blog, soon to be as well. But yes, it will be on the NPU website for you too.
Hey, Leo, looking forward to seeing you. You're going to be in San Diego area, so I'm going to come over there. So Brandon, we got company coming. We got family and friends coming.
Can't wait.
Yeah.
I know.
And a question from Algernon real quick about joining the Power Purpose program. Kenneth, about the software program. Um, so we'll be putting you in touch with our office. These are typically content related, but and those of you that are on with us that have spoken with Brandon, worked with Brandon, truly very awesome. Also, if you intend to speak with all of us more about these programs, you're going to be speaking with Brandon on a much larger basis here. So we'll reach out to you and we'll talk a little more about that off the call. That's Algernon and Kenneth. We'll talk about the software and also how to join the Power of Purpose program.
And Derek, I'd love to, let's make sure we can connect up Brandon and Kenneth get them connected on what Kenneth is doing and bringing the apps. And Kenneth, I can't wait. So make sure Derek can get those two together, and you guys then will share the results with the rest of you. That's what we want these Purpose Fridays to be, is outcome oriented and action and the next steps. And so we'll keep sharing that with you.
Absolutely. And you could be getting to talk to Brandon on a larger level. That'll be great too. Yes, our website is thepowerofpurpose.com. And
And you guys, you know what? Derek, I want to tell them, if you guys haven't seen it, go watch nonprofitwebclass.com. Nonprofit web class, it's all one word, nonprofitwebclass.com. Go check out, that's our training that really leads you into the world of the nonprofits. That's another place they can go.
Yes. And then we have a question from Superstar Mentoring student Catherine. Catherine asks, are you coming to San Diego? Well, we actually have an office in San Diego now.
That's where Brandon is.
Yep. And we do spend quite a bit of time out there. Catherine Kiefer, that is where we are. One of our bases now is in San Diego. So be sure to let us know if you're coming out that way. And if we're out there, we'll be able to meet up with you.
Oh, I'd love to. It's good to hear from you. We had a lot of fun together.
Yeah, it's been great. We'll do a quick shout out too to all of our Superstar Mentoring students real quick while we have Catherine there. We also have our superstars Karina and Leo.
Hey, Karina.
We also have Gary Gerard with us.
Wow. Oh, Gary.
This is great.
That's awesome.
Algernon says we need to get an office in Atlanta.
Hey, we've done a lot of work in Atlanta when we were with Home Depot and that. So help us. We'll come there and you help us get some things going there.
Yes.
Love it.
Yes, and Renee, that's thepowerpurpose.com and also nonprofitwebclass.com to follow us more there.
Hey, since we got a lot of family and friends on and you're becoming part of our family and friends, I'll tell you that my real selfish reason, Atlanta, it's closer to North Carolina where my two little grandsons are, little 2-year-old Mason and 4-year-old Davin. So we definitely will work on Atlanta. I'm very motivated on that one.
Okay. Got a question here from Uma. Hi, Uma. Nice to see you again.
Uma's in Hawaii. I remember her.
Yeah, she's a nonprofit called, I hope I say this correctly, the Maunalana Center for Health and Healing.
Yeah, wow.
And they teach people how they can heal themselves and also how to prevent cancer with weekend workshops.
Wow.
That is the name of the organization. She loves the name of the center, and it's incorporated with this name, but I'm wondering if the name could be misleading in any way. She's been told it might be when it incorporates healing, there could be possible misnomers or a problem there. I could change it to the Mauna Lana Wellness Center. I prefer to keep it as it is. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Tell me what it is again.
Okay, it is.
The Healing Center?
Yes, the Mauna Lana Center for Health and Healing.
No, I love that. I mean, that's that paradigm shift. The old guard is saying, no, we better put in wellness. No, it's time. And there's so many horror stories out there about, doctors being shut down and actually arrested in that because they were curing cancer. And I've met with some of them. We've got to step up, and what you're bringing is healing. So I love that you're saying it for what it really is. It's time.
It is time. I like that expression. Next up, Beverly asks, I am trying to turn a 4-unit into veterans housing, but do not know how to do that. Pointers, any ideas?
I got a great idea. We've done it with our mentoring students around the country. Go to your housing authority and ask about the VASH vouchers, VASH. A few years ago, for the first time, HUD and the Veterans Administration came together and did a memorandum of understanding. They have the MOUs or whatever, and they created vouchers. They're like Section 8 vouchers, but they're for veterans. And, if you know Section 8, we worked on those for 30 years from the disability community so we could live in the community. There's waiting lists and it takes forever to get on it now. But VASH vouchers are new enough to where we could take the 1 in 6 homeless Brandon was talking about and move them into their own apartment with a VASH voucher. Many, many states are turning them back because it's so fragmented. We don't know if the housing authority administers them. We don't know if VA administers them. Some states, some places we found the VA hospital social workers have them. Some states, the housing authority has them. Find out, because they're an amazing source of funding. They're even higher pay than the Section 8 voucher. So as an owner of a multi-unit, that you're guaranteed every month you get that check every month, and you're helping provide housing to people that haven't had that opportunity. So with your fourplex, you've got funding. I'm telling you, from Colorado Springs, Charles went in and they had 90 VASH vouchers just sitting there, and she said, hey, if you can find me 90 apartment units, I can move 90 people in with funding yesterday. El Paso. It doesn't matter where we've sent our mentoring students. They've been told, oh yeah, we got VASH vouchers. So that would be a start for you to go find out the VASH vouchers, and then go to a long-term care home and start talking to these young guys and gals, find out what they want, and they could be your new tenants with the VASH voucher, get them out of that long-term care home and put them into housing with funding.
Okay, next comment from Derek. Boy, I like that name.
I knew it.
Yeah, good to see you.
I did too. I did too. I thought of it 30-some years ago.
He said, great stuff, guys. More ideas running around my mind. Well, you better get a good pair of jogging shoes for those ideas, because that's what we like to do here, is those ideas running. William asks, where is the office in San Diego? Originally it was in Sorrento Valley, but now it's in Pacific Beach.
Yeah, we're a couple blocks from the beach.
I can't
it's
wait
a hard,
for. We talked
hard
about
office to
mental
have.
health, Brandon and Derek. Our mental health. Before long, we want to have a place on the beach where you guys can all come in and hang out. And we can mastermind. So we
Oh
we
yeah,
definitely have goals too.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, it's a hard office to go to. Being get the breeze from the ocean, you know, it's a rough time.
Darn.
Yeah, really, very tough working conditions, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Kenneth asked, this is an interesting question, Kenneth. How can we help the power of purpose?
I love that. I love that. Help us spread the word about what we're doing, and that way, the more we're out there, Kenneth, the more we can bring new services, new ideas, new strategies, new opportunities to our nonprofit. We got two huge opportunities this week that I can't talk about yet, but you guys, it's going to take our nonprofits to another level. So Kenneth, get the word out there about what we're doing, and part of what me and the team, Brand and Derek, part of what we are doing now is going and meeting with the National Plan Giving Council, the philanthropy associations, so that we can go out and be that voice for the 10,000 at least nonprofits that we're creating. You know, to go meet with the estate planners to talk about charitable giving of real estate. So you could help us in a lot of ways with the visibility, just like us spotlighting our nonprofits, helping get the word out about what we're doing, and spotlighting us as a corporation so that it opens the doors for all the nonprofits. That's a great question. I love that. Thank you. Are you there, Derek?
Yes, and Kenneth actually has 120,000 Twitter followers. That's a great way to spread word through social media, and that's what we're all about. We're very community based, coalition based, very oriented, and that's in that aspect of it. You know, putting together a movement, movements even, and also um, we love staying connected with this large group like that, and that's how we feel we can bring about the most effective way of the change and helping people. So that's fantastic.
Derek and Brandon, should we think about this? But Kenneth, one of the ways I think you could help promote and lift up us with our mission of launching and empowering at least 10,000 nonprofits to really make a difference in this world, to bring back community, to create love, is send folks a nonprofit web class. Check it out, Kenneth. Our nonprofit web class is that beginning introduction to get people's minds open, to show them the opportunities and the potential out there. We have a lot of folks email us in all the time about, wow, that opened my eyes. The one Brandon was talking about this week, when we met with him, that was our first mentoring session this week, and he said, I never heard of nonprofits, been doing real estate for 40 years, but it made sense. And then I thought, why not me? So Kenneth, that's a way to really get people in this country to start thinking bigger and look at, we always say we don't think outside the box, there is no box. It really, the nonprofit corporations really are the social conscience of our communities. We really are much more than just that little bake sale charity or do good or help. We come forward with social policy. We're the ones that create the changes in the paradigm and the mindsets look at policies that are so disempowering. You know, I just had this conversation yesterday with an elder that said, well, you know, these people just have that welfare mentality, and, you know, and I said, look, I've been doing this for 35 years. It's the system that oppresses us. It's not the people. Like when I started my Center for People with Disabilities and wanted to hire all people with disabilities, if you made more than $300 a month, you lose your Medicaid. Well, at that time, we're not going to get insured by any other place because of our disability. So it makes sense, okay, let's go meet with Medicaid. Let's look at the policy and learn it. And let's create a working disabled policy where you can work and make $100,000 a year if you want, and you buy your Medicaid. Doesn't that make sense? So we were in the first states that did the working disabled program through Medicaid. It saved our Medicaid budget big time. People kept their insurance and bought it just like any other insurance and could make as much money as they could leading this movement. So I love, Kenneth, I can't let go of your question of how can you help us. We're the ones, the nonprofits are the ones that are going to really bring this country back.
Kenneth is in very good connection with the Foundation Center. That's great. We love the Foundation Center. We've been in touch with them for a very long time, and that's part of what we're doing. We're going into the next something we're talking about in the coming weeks, but we have a very big project we're leading up now along the lines of certification for our nonprofits, but also to have that certification and then bring in the funders. That's what they're constantly looking for, is these kind of like accredited nonprofits with standing, and we're looking to now bring the two worlds together through this kind of certification accreditation process. So yeah, that's going to be a great contact right there in San Francisco. Absolutely.
Kenneth, that's amazing. We've spent 10 years working on an accreditation center with certifications. When I met with the Gates Foundation, you know, years ago to Seattle, before they didn't ask Warren Buffett's contribution, but they knew, and they told us one of their biggest fears, not fear, one of their biggest gaps was they didn't have the infrastructure to do the due diligence to vet out the nonprofits that they were granting money to make sure they've got the 501c3 and the board of directors and their mission statement and all those things. And any other industry, even EMS, it doesn't matter. They've got an accreditation. They've got a certification. So we recently met with the Clinton Foundation and again brought up the conversation along with charitable giving real estate as the best funding opportunity. So the foundations are very supportive. And that's another way all of you guys can help us on this call is as we're growing, be here where we can bring you the tools. The certification, it's going to be rolling out in the next 6 weeks. And again, very, very grateful for Derek, you guys. Derek is the behind the scenes, has built our platforms that allows Brandon and I to be talking to you guys now, Jonathan, for you to be on, Uma, Leo, Karina, all of you guys, Catherine, all of you guys. Derek is building the platforms in the software and the technology, and that. Well, now the next, what they're working on day and night right now is the certifications. So you guys are going to be the first ones we want to roll that out to, and go to the Foundation Center, go to the National Plan Giving Council, go to the foundations, and be able to talk about our certifications and accrediting, which is elevate you guys. Uma, with what you're doing. Leo, you in Ohio, I mean, Karina, think about being certified and having that seal of approval that gives you a leg up with some of the funders. So that's what we're working on. So, talking about all of your projects, we want to keep you guys aware and the lead of what we're talking about. One of the things we're doing, we just set it up this week. We haven't even launched it, told anyone. I told our first mentoring student yesterday, we're setting up a focus group we've developed a software, again, Derek led in that, for the power of free real estate. Amazing, sophisticated. Derek took it to Silicon Valley a couple, 3 weeks ago with the leaders in that whole area, and they sat down and were blown away with it. And so now our lead mentor, Chase Magnuson, who's led this country, been in Forbes and Fortune, and you just don't get there without some pretty terrific credibility. He led in charitable giving of real estate. He's mentored Derek for 10 years now, wanted to pass the torch. And when Chase saw the software, he told me and Derek, I'll never forget being at that meeting with him when he said, this is the Maserati of anything that's ever been done. He said the biggest gap we've ever had is locating the donors, getting the word out there, and the software does that. So taking that now to do in our mailing campaigns, and we have a lot of mentoring students that are launching their mailing campaigns. They're getting phone calls, the phones are ringing. So we're putting together a focus group of 5 or 10 of our students at no charge that would just come together and start split testing. Which letter is getting the best results, what kind of script is getting the best results, bringing Chase on the phone with us to guide us through it. So if you guys are anyone's interested in that, we're going to be putting the email out next week. We're taking did we decide the first 5, the top 5 mentoring students we're going to bring into the focus group. And what we'll do with all of you guys, we'll start sharing the results. We'll start, and then we're going to set up a mastermind that, again, it'll be an investment to join the mastermind, but it'll be a result of what came out of that focus group. So we have a lot going on.
Yes, yeah, to say the least. But excellent segue, because we have Michelle just with a question about how does charitable giving of nonprofits work as related to the real estate. So we're going to be talking about that quite a bit. Just as you would imagine, raising donations of cash, somebody sending a check, in-kind donations of materials, that type of support, same basic concept, only as real estate. And we have a very niche process of doing that all across the country. And then to add that on with Catherine's question about a fiscal agent, that's what our nonprofit also does for our students, acting as a fiscal agent and also a facilitator of real estate gifts. And then Kenneth also mentioned as well, he hit about estate planners on this process. And absolutely, those are a huge source of leads for us on that. And that's what we like to do all across the country. So what we are doing right now with our students is facilitating those real estate transactions for them to help them raise funding. And that's part of what we do with our own nonprofit.
And you guys, all of you go out there. When you go out there all excited, not many people are familiar with it. Estate planners, I'm not kidding, we go in and have to educate financial planners, estate attorneys, and Chase told us 10 years ago that 85% of all real estate donations are rejected by nonprofits. And we're going, what? Because back in the 80s, the Boy Scouts of Chicago went bankrupt because they took property, it had environmental, and it's reverberated. So we're thinking, so look at the opportunity, right? Okay, so the first letter campaign we set out last year as a beta test from our software. It resulted in a call from a lady that called up our mentoring student and said, either this is too good to be true or it's a mess up. She said, I have been tasked with my national property management company with donating properties, and I've called every nonprofit you can imagine, United Way, Habitat, you name it, and they all act like I'm a farce or I'm a scam. And she said, nobody will accept it. And it was like, yeah, we will. We ended up getting 5 houses donated off of that one letter. So if you go to folks excited about talking about it, folks are not knowledgeable. One of our mentoring students is good friends with a very well-known estate attorney nationally. Like he handled like the lottery winner with like 300 million and set up a trust and went in as a trust. I mean, he's big time. So we sat down. He handed a book because he knew she set up a nonprofit, and he said he gives this to all of his nonprofits. And the number 2 thing was never accept real estate. Don't mess with it. Don't get involved with it. And I'm like, and so I knew Chase had armed me with, remember, the knowledge is power. So he gave me some court cases, some different things, some new tax rules. Here's this guy that's a tax and estate attorney, and I started talking about it. At first it was kind of heated and a little bit intense, and by the end of the hour, I want to learn more, and it would be an honor to meet with Chase. So you got to really educate people, and it's fantastic for donors. It's a wealth transferring strategy. We can set up annuities or charitable remainder flip trust, or they can get an income for the rest of their life. They get the tax deduction from the fair market value. We bargain sell it. It's an amazing strategy. So if you think about it, last year, Derek showed me this. He's our great researcher. 450-some billion came to nonprofits. Only 2% of that was from real estate, and yet over 60% of our country's wealth is held in real estate. You see the opportunity there? The baby boomers, the folks that are in their 80s now, that are tired of their multi-units in Florida, that have 3 houses in Sun Valley, Idaho, and can't go to them anymore. You see the opportunity where we could help them. At the same time, they're helping our mission and what we're doing with our nonprofit. It's huge. It's getting ready to explode with us.
Yes, that absolutely really is. Next, from Caroline. Caroline is brand new. I wanted to get the beginning training and steps to start the process. Feeling like a lost kindergartner in high school. Don't worry about that, Caroline. On these typically, it's all matter of things, nonprofit related. We discuss whether it's the very basic beginnings of kind of conceptualizing a mission statement, or even the name of an organization, or identifying your purpose or passion, all the way to, like we talked about, very more advanced stuff with real estate and organizational development, things like that. So start that process. Watch the web class, free web class at nonprofitwebclass.com. That'll get you on the ball. That'll get you rolling. Also, with we have the nonprofit startup guide. Okay, so it gives you a real good jumpstart course to that, and also with Purpose Into Profits and Nonprofit University. That's what we have in the university. We have the 101 Nonprofit Creation, and Purpose Into Profits. We have Module 1, Getting Started, and it really just takes it down to that very basic level of just getting started. So go ahead and get going on those. Join us on our weekly chats here as we discuss topics and strategies and tips, and then also your questions through this medium right here.
And you'll learn. I can't ever not go without not adding a little bit. But I tell you what, don't feel like that kindergarten overwhelmed. Think about our personal stories. 30 years ago, I barely came out of the coma, and I really did not come out like TV where I started going, hey guys. It was a process where I had to relearn how to walk and talk and swallow. things you never learned, all of a sudden they're gone. And having to learn to walk by rolling on a mat for months, and then them teaching me how to crawl. And you know what? Brandon said the most powerful, important thing on this call. It was about purpose. I let go of fear. I never gave up. I started living my purpose at an early age. And I could not talk where people could understand me. I was in a wheelchair. They'd tie a towel around me because I drooled. I wore a patch, really. And yet I was out there just going to make a difference. So, Catherine, you don't have to know any of the details. You just have to have a purpose and believe and have faith. And I'm telling you, there is nothing that can stop you. I learned the power of the mind. So grateful. Something so tragic is so triumphant. Because laying there in a coma and not being able to communicate, the power of our mind, I never would have known that. So put your mind, focus it, and just know that you believe that you can make this impact, and it will happen. Just get out there, start talking to people. Things will be sent to you. Doors will be opened. So I don't go much for excuses because I think, gosh, we could barely walk or talk, and you went out there and did it and had no clue about anything, never even had anything like this to listen to. We just went out and did it.
Mm-hmm. Sound advice. Catherine, yes, and this applies to all on the phone. Just talking about when you are getting calls with potentially interested parties or individuals with children giving of real estate deals. I believe you still have, through our mentoring program, you still have my email through our mentoring students, and this goes for everyone as well. If you have an interested in person or organization interested in donating real estate to you for funding, you're welcome to reach out to us, reach out to even me specifically, where we can look at evaluating that property to see if it's a fit for like a charitable giving real estate transaction. That's typically what we go into, where we go into an evaluation period, then we go into negotiation to work out a win-win-win on all sides. That's donor, that's the donor property owner, that's the nonprofit. Okay, that's anybody else that's involved. Beyond that, if it's a third-party buyer or investor or realtor, that's exactly how we structure these, is win-win-win for all. Okay, and then from there we go into a contract structure and into closing. And then, yes, from this process, we just got our sixth in Silicon Valley, where we have 6 national buyers networks, investor networks that buy our properties, because we love an accelerated transaction, because that's what we do it for. Is we're looking to get the most amount of revenue out of a property in the quickest manner possible for the nonprofit, and that's why we like an accelerated transaction. We like to get the nonprofits that funding quickly, especially if most of our nonprofits coming to us, our students being in the realm of startup or emerging nonprofit.
And Derek, we did tell people the first one we went like 2.5 hours. Last week we said we're not going to do it that long. We'll do an hour and cut the questions. But I'm telling you, for starting on the 4th of July weekend, I'm loving the questions. So we are going a little longer today, but it's important for us to have these conversations.
Yes, absolutely, and a good point by Kenneth echoing that sentiment as well. On the CGRE side, with tax guys, licensed agents, realtors, absolutely realtors, buyers, the donors, the property owners, if it's even not a donation in the sense, if it's actually like a bargain sale, all facets of these transactions, whether it's a realtor or the nonprofit, obviously, and the donor, will come out so much further ahead using this process. It really is. It's just a lack of knowledge, and that's what we're trying to bring out to the masses in a large way, is that knowledge. And thank you, Caroline. Thank you, Antonia. And let's go ahead and do it. I know with this, we're coming up to the 3-hour mark here, so we have a last call on questions.
Wow, what a way to start the weekend. Brandon, you're amazing.
Thank you. You're amazing, Sherry.
So grateful to have you part of our family and co-founding and leading this, Brandon. We got to support our own personal passion and purposes. And Brandon, you're the one that is going to lead us and guide us as to how we can support. So thank you.
Yes. Brandon, it's an absolute pleasure having you on today. We look forward to having you on in the future. And then for everyone coming as a purpose consultant, if you've talked with Brandon, you know, if you'll be talking to him soon, then you're going to know just what an incredible person he is, and his character, the size of his heart, and really embracing, from the ground up what our mission is. And a lot of that, his passion is all of you out there, people out you that are out there right now, joining us to make a difference. So thank you, Brandon, for jumping on.
Brandon, Derek, I want to take a minute to congratulate and celebrate this weekend for the people that have stepped up and taken action. Leo, Karina, Catherine, Uma, Jonathan, Derek, I know I'm going to leave some out. So all the ones that we feel so honored, so privileged that we get to be a part of the seed, of planting that seed, the part of the impact that you guys are all out making. So I want to congratulate you and Terry. Go celebrate this weekend. Karina, all of you guys, you really are blessings in our lives, and you took action, and that's what's going to bring true change to the veterans, the people that Brandon, his community. It's folks like you guys. So let's go celebrate.
Yes. Thank you again, Mom. Brandon, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Very inspiring. Good to have you on today.
Yeah, I feel honored and a lot of gratitude and very grateful to have the opportunity to do it. And just thanks to everyone for taking some time out to be on the call and to want to make some change and some impact in the world. So look forward to, if I haven't talked to you, look forward to speaking with you in the future.
Awesome. Well, happy 4th, you guys, and Brandon, for what you've done for us in the past and what you're doing now. A big dose of gratitude, thankfulness goes your way.
Well, thank you, Sherry.
And thanks, Derek, you guys. What a great way. It feels so full of gratitude. A great way to start the 4th and the celebration. Be careful, you guys, and remember what this weekend's about and how we're going to go forward and really bring supports and services and a whole new economic landscape for our future leaders.
Thank you again, everyone, for joining us. Appreciate having you on. Have a safe holiday weekend, everyone. And we will see you next Friday, same place, same time. Okay, Brandon, Mom, you guys have a great 4th. We'll see you guys. We'll talk to you guys soon.
You guys too.
Yeah. You guys take care. Have a great holiday. Be safe.
Right.
Take care.
All right.
Woo! Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Bye now.